This is The Express with Gary Allen, your 360-degree view of the world. Now, here's your host, Gary Allen.
And good evening to all of you out there, and thank you so much for joining us tonight on The Express. This is going to be an exciting show for us tonight. I have a gentleman who has become a fast friend of mine, and he's going to be joining us in just a couple of minutes. I know, Mark, you're on the air. Just give me a second to do what I need to do here. Yep. For those of you that are keeping track of this show, by the way, I want to say hello to Randy Jones out there. Randy, thank you so much for being there every week. As all of you, I'm pleased to have you with me. Keep track of me on Facebook at Gary Allen, A-L-A-N. You can also go to youtube.com and listen to any of my past shows. I got about 30-some shows. This show will be on there come the end of this week. You go to youtube.com, Gary Allen, The Express Interviews. Thursday night, this program repeats itself at 7 p.m. on diversitybroadcastnetwork.com, our sister network run by our dear friend Renee. Also, progressivevoices.com also has my shows going up there now. That's John Cena from Air America, as well as tunein.com. Go head on over there, sign up, make TMV Cafe your favorite, and you can listen to all our shows here on the network. Before I get to my guest, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the tragedy that occurred over this weekend. As many of you know, I live in Orlando. I live approximately about 5 to 7 miles away from where the tragedy occurred. There wasn't just one, there was two. There was one on Friday night where a young singer was killed by some bizarre and sycophant fan. And then the following night, I had just come in from the science fair, which I was part of, and enjoying that a great deal, and met a lot of wonderful people. And woke up the next morning to one of the most horrific things next to 9/11 that probably has happened since 9/11 itself, and that's the lunacy, the insanity, and the cowardness of a man who apparently now stalked out the facility, the Pulse, as well as going over to Disney. His wife knew about it, but didn't bother to say anything. I don't know if there's any legal schmeagle with any of this or not. I'm not going to get into the particulars about guns and about the legal aspect and the political aspect. I'll leave that to the professionals somewhat. I will just say to all of you out there that my heart goes out to all the families who lost someone. I do not know anybody that died. I know a few people that probably do, but I haven't heard from them. These people who commit these crimes are cowards. There's no other way of putting it. They are cowards. Those of us in the show business world, and I know my guest Mark will share in this, and I'll let him speak in a minute, we share in the fact that this community that we live in show business is an open community. We have gay and lesbian and transgender people in our community. We embrace them and we love them. And for someone to go in a cowardly act, and I will not stop using that word referring to terrorists. They are cowards. They have to hide behind someone else in order to get their thought across, and they don't know how to do it any more eloquently than killing people. And that isn't eloquent, but I can't think of another word at the moment. So that's all I'm going to say on it. These people are cowards, and they should be annihilated from the face of the earth. And our community embraces all the gay and lesbian, transgender people, all the people of the world, not just a certain segment of the world. And you can't cut off the world by building walls. We need to build bridges, and we need to understand, and we need to get to the bottom of it so this doesn't happen again. My guest tonight is a good friend of mine who has become a good friend very quickly. One of the nicest young men you're ever going to meet in your life, Mark Riccadonna. I hope I got that correct. Hope I finally got it right. Yeah. Mark is one of the writers for Saturday Night Live. He is also a young man. Update. Well, the weekend update. All right, weekend update. But you are part of the writing team. You left Youngstown, Ohio, a place where I used to go get haircuts when I went to Carnegie Mellon, believe it or not. At the age of 17 years old, he left for New York. He became a member of the the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. He has climbed and clawed his way to great success in New York, and I am proud to call him my friend. Mark, my friend, if there's anything you would like to add to what I just said, please feel free. I know New York feels for us as much as we feel for the rest of the world. So, Mark, welcome to the Express.
Thank you, man. Thanks for having me. And it's so good to be on. And I tell you, when I got news of what happened, I just couldn't believe it. I was in Atlanta, and I had a really early flight. And when I went to go get on the flight, that was all over the news. And I really didn't get to know exactly what happened until I landed, and then found out. And it's so sad.
Yeah. And to think it wasn't the only thing. The night before, a young lady was killed on stage here at a theater that I've gone to many times for different performances. It's a quaint little quiet theater. And the young lady, and I forget her name, she was killed. She was apparently one of the finalists and a participant on The Voice. So,
man.
Yeah, and
so
she was
sad.
killed. It is. I'll be honest with you. I grew up in a time when the biggest thing that happened in my generation was the assassination of John F. Kennedy, followed by Martin Luther King, then Robert Kennedy. And ever since then, ever since John F. Kennedy was killed, it seems like the world has gone to hell in a handbag. We don't sit down and negotiate and talk anymore. It's all violence. It's perpetrated by cowards, as far as I'm concerned. And but anyway, let's get on to why you are here. Where did your passion begin for show business? Was it back in Youngstown? By the way, I'm being serious. I used to go to Youngstown, Ohio. There was a place there who had a very attractive girl cutting hair. And those of us who worked at this particular supper club in Pittsburgh used to go there to get a haircut, and we go and have lunch and everything else like that. But where did your passion begin for show business? Back in Youngstown?
Yeah, I'll tell you, Ben, I have a weird story with how everything kind of came about. I was a little bit of a meathead. I was a jock. I was an athlete, and I had a thing for painting and drawing and photography, and I loved it, and I was good at it. And I used to have the meatheads, of my school kind of every once in a while give me some, crap about, being artsy. And I remember distinctly saying, "Oh, that's cool. I'll quit playing football since I'm not welcome with you guys." And then they immediately got quiet because I was actually a really good athlete. I was kind of a glue guy. Like, I was in between all the different kind of people and would just embrace everything. And I built sets for the play with my brother, and I was a junior. Yeah, I was a junior. No, I had to be a sophomore because my brother was with me. So we're putting up this thing, and the lead character in a play called Mousetrap, the lead character quit, and the play was like a week away. And the director actually threw her hands up and just yelled, "Does anyone want to be in a play?" And I just went, "Yeah, you know what? I'll do it."
Yeah.
And I did my best to learn kind of what I was supposed to do. I learned kind of the lines, but I pretty much, without knowing improv at the time, I pretty much improv'd my way through the show each night. And I just, that moment, realized, like, this is really fun. And this is really what I'd love to do. And so I started to pursue thinking about acting, and I got into a really great school. It's funny, I had a couple schools that turned me down, and then the best school let me in.
You're kidding. Somebody actually turned you down, sir.
Yeah, quite a few of them. Actually, I think your alma mater turned me down.
What?
Yeah.
The U turned you down? The U turned you down?
I ended up in New York at the American Academy, and I graduated, and I actually asked the guy who auditioned me for the school. I said, why would you have ever picked me? I had to be awful. And he goes, "Yeah, but you had no experience, so you had no bad habits. I knew we could actually teach you."
You know, that is pretty much kind of somewhat happened to me. When I was a little boy, I played one of the three wise men in the Christmas play, and we had a wooden stage. And every time I would kneel down, I have a heavy, I don't know how to kneel gracefully, and you'd hear thump, and I'd hear a laughter, and I went, "Oh, this is interesting." Fast forward about 20 years later, I'm in Pittsburgh visiting a friend who I served in the military with, and the next thing I know, he's auditioning for Carnegie Mellon to get in their theater department. Somebody comes by me and sits down, and I just think he's somebody who's auditioning. He said, "Hey, are you auditioning?" And I said, No, I'm just here visiting a friend, and he's inside auditioning for your for the theater school here." And he says, "Well, how about you?" And I said, "Oh, no. I said, I've dabbled in it in school. I said, I do it for fun, but I'm not a serious actor by any stretch." Anyway, he said, "Well, here, read this and come in, and you know, I'd love to see you, you know." So I did. I went in, and I got it. I got accepted into the school. My buddy didn't, and and you know who that gentleman was?
Who was it?
Stephen Boschko.
No way.
Yeah. And for those of you that are not familiar with that, he was the producer of Hill Street Blues, St. Elsewhere, and about a ton of other TV shows over the years.
Whoa, that's awesome.
Yeah, and when I got to L.A., I got work right away because he ran into me at the Improv where I was doing some stand-up, and the rest is history. I managed to make a little bit of a living at it, but I was more of a voice guy than anything else. Now,
what got you to do stand-up?
My uncle was a stand-up comic for, 35 years, Tubby Boots in Miami Beach. And I had a terrible fright of being on stage, believe it or not. I suffered from stage fright, and I wanted to overcome it. So I knew the only way I could overcome it is to push myself. Now, what I didn't realize was that there are a lot of other people that suffer from stage fright. Almost everybody does it sometime or another. But you got to push yourself, and so I overcame that, and to the point where I became an MC for Bud at the Improv from time to time, and it was a whole lot of fun. It really was. Speaking of which, go ahead.
Oh, Henry Winkler told us he spoke at our school, and he told us you got to use that.
Yes.
That nervousness of being on stage, you use it, you put it into you, and you put it out there, and it'll help you succeed. And he was amazing. Actually, Henry Winkler came in, and he spoke for like 2 hours, and we got a whole year's worth of education from that guy.
He suffers from the same thing that I suffer from, that Jay Leno suffers from, dyslexia.
I'm dyslexic.
Yeah, I suffer from dyslexia. I
used to have to take classes.
Yeah, they didn't discover it on me until I was in college, believe it or not.
Wow.
Yeah, because
it's a certain way the brain works, and it probably is great for the arts, because somebody described dyslexia to me as you can see the forest, but you can't see the trees.
Yeah, and frankly, after being in the Air Force for as many years as I was, I don't want to see any more forests anyway. I just assume go to the remote.
You're an Air Force guy. I am at Fort Dix and McGuire Air Force Base right now as we speak. I'm in my car.
What are you doing there? Oh, you're performing, aren't you?
I did a show earlier, yeah.
Yeah, because I know you do stuff with the USO, which we're going to get into a little bit later on. Well, now, you were with the American Academy. How did that come about as a 17-year-old going to New York?
So I got in. I went in an audition. I got in there, and all the other schools passed on me. Mm-hmm. And I moved there at 17, and I was living in 40th and 8th, right across from the bus station in New York City. Me, 3 guys, a studio apartment.
And all the hookers you could see.
Yeah, this was before Times Square was cleaned up. They just started thinking about cleaning it up at the time.
Yeah.
So it was weird, a farm boy from, Brookfield, Ohio, stepping over a heroin addict to go get milk in the morning. There's a little bit of a change in life and a change in pace, but I really embraced it. And, even, not to bring up a sad moment, but the tragedy that happened, I grew up around a lot of meatheads that were very anti-gay and would say things, how can you go to school with all those, pick the word, and they didn't realize that they had fear because they just didn't know. I preferred hanging out with gay guys than straight guys. They were so much more fun. Mm-hmm. They smelled better. They were trying to help me with the ladies. It was a very changing process moving to New York. It was really cool. And I remember coming home and my parents being like, "You're a really changed person. I think a lot of people should go through this."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, New York will change you in so many ways. I made a decision to go to L.A. as compared to New York, because I thought, well, if I get unemployed and I can't afford a place, at least in LA I can sleep on the streets or something, or in my car, whereas in New York I could freeze to death if it's the wrong time of the year.
Yeah, see, no, wait. I did the similar. One of the choices why New York over LA, because the Academy has an LA campus, was because if something happens and it all goes to hell, I could have somebody drive from Ohio to come get me.
Well, they do have. Well, Mark, they do have roads to California.
Yeah, but they're really long.
Oh God! All right. Well, I can understand that, but
I actually, as a little kid, I used to watch. I would sneak at night when everybody went to sleep. I'd sneak downstairs, and we had like this split level home where I'd go downstairs and nobody could hear the TV, and I would turn on TV and I'd watch TV all night. And I used to watch all those old '70s cop shows, and they all took place in New York.
Yeah,
and I was so obsessed with New York City that I knew at some point I was going to move there. Even before I knew I wanted to act, I wanted to be in 1970s New York, though.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, Kojak was the big TV show when I was doing all that back then. And of course, there have been some – I've been to New York many, many times. I mean, I actually thought about going to Berghoff's at one time for some classes, but that's when I went to L.A. instead and got myself hooked up with the Groundlings and all that. Somewhere along the line – cool. Yeah, we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But somewhere along the line, somebody pushed you on stage to be a stand-up comic. Besides being a writer and an actor, you're also a stand-up comic. Did the training that you got at the American Academy, did that help you with your comedy as time went on? And just so everybody out there understands, and this is coming from someone else, I know what it was like for the first time for me on stage. I was frightened out of my skull, even though I thought I had some funny stuff, which I didn't. What was it like for you?
I had, because of all the stage work that we did at the Academy, I had the confidence to go out there and sell me. I just didn't have the material. I just wasn't there yet. If I go and put on the tape of my, first year of comedy, I'd be so embarrassed. There was no, jokes there. There wasn't punchlines. But there was a lot of confidence.
Well, about a month or so ago, maybe 6 weeks ago, we had Chris DiPetta on, and I know you know who Chris is.
Yeah.
He's Billy Gardell's manager. And he said the first time he saw Billy Gardell on stage, he said the confidence and the stage presence, which is what everybody told me I had, but he said his stuff stunk. It just reeked. It just reeked. But, I mean, there's something inside of you that makes you keep going, and you want to get back on stage, and you want to do it, and you got to do it. There's an inner thing about doing it. How long did it take you? Because some people don't believe me. How long did it take you before you had a tight 20?
Oh, geez. 20? Because when I first started, I got coaxed by some comedians because I worked at a comedy club to go up and just try it. So for a year and a half, I was just going up at the end of the show when everybody was paying their checks.
Yeah.
I was just going up when nobody was paying attention.
Yeah.
And I was addicted to it. Nobody was even watching me do it, but it was amazing, and it was such a great feeling, coming from being an actor, of I can go on stage and I get to write my own monologue, so I can talk about whatever I want. And there was no pressure because I wasn't trying to be a comedian. I was just having fun with my buddies. And so I just was doing 5-minute sets forever.
Yeah.
I honestly think the first time I did 20 minutes, it was painful. It was really painful because it takes a long time, because when you think you got a good 5, you probably actually only have about 3.
Yeah.
And then when you think you got a good 10, you probably have a good 7. So, when I was doing 20-minute sets on the road, I was probably not doing that well. I'm trying to think when it clicked and I really felt like, oh, it's happening. But I was always fearless. That was the one thing a lot of these, really great headliners would bring me with them, because I was fearless. I'd go up and nobody'd be paying attention. The lights sucked. The sound sucked. I didn't care. I just went up and tried to round them up into paying attention.
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of like, once I got them to listen, the headliner would like me. All right, bring me up. They're like, now they're listening, I'm getting off stage.
Yeah. What did you do about handling hecklers?
I got heckled once so amazingly that I accept hecklers. I enjoy, like, when they bring it out, I laugh at what they say and embrace it. I was in Troy, New York. I don't know if you know Troy, New York.
Yeah.
I'm on stage, and it was Good Friday, by the way.
Oh,
it was Good Friday. I'm on stage, and I just was on the phone, and I just quit my job at Stand Up New York, the job I work. And right as they were announcing my name, I was hanging up the phone. I go on stage, and there's a giant poster of Lee Horsley. Do you remember him?
Yes.
Matt Houston. And he's like an old beer ad. And I'm going, they got Lee Horsley. If this is Troy, I'm with the Romans. And they started booing, and somebody actually threw a dinner roll at me. And I go, and on Good Friday, now I know what Jesus went through.
Oh, God.
And some guy in the front row leaned into me and goes, yeah, but Jesus is going to come back. And I went, when the audience is better than you, it's time to hang up. Good night, guys. And the MC went back out. When I walked off, the headliner was a really funny comedian named Spanky. And he goes, you ever see when, like, the tough kid goes to get his, flu shot? And when he gets the shot, he cries. That's what I just felt when he got heckled like that.
Oh, God.
Because I was always fearless. I would just go up, and if people were yelling at me, I'd go back and forth with them. I didn't care. To me, it was fun. But, and over the years, I started to just embrace the heckling. Yeah. If somebody yells something like, oh, okay, yeah, that's great.
When did the storytelling become a real major part of the act that now you're noted for?
It was interesting. I started to do comedy because I love Rodney Dangerfield, Stephen Wright, and I have a great Stephen Wright story I'll tell you. But I was always into this, like, trying to write these jokes, like just really clever jokes, and they never were. They weren't that good. And I was working with this comic, and we were somewhere in New Jersey, and he just went, you're an actor. Why don't you get up there and act? I can see it in your eyes that you want to. Like, do the joke, but act it out and enjoy it. And I started doing it, and then all of a sudden I realized I started doing these I started abandoning the jokes and just telling the stories that really happened. And people were moving up in their seat and sitting at the edge, and I might not get a laugh for a few minutes, but people were at the edge of their seat, and I found that so much more powerful. And so I started really getting into these long-form stories, and then somebody started telling me that it's starting to become a scene, that there's people that aren't even comedians that are doing storytelling. And I dove right in, and I loved it. But I like the marriage of having comedy in it and having jokes in it, because you can build up some really great tension,
right?
And pop it. And when that pop happens and that gut laugh comes out, you feel like you won. It's the greatest feeling in the world.
Back in the day, comedians like Bill Cosby, Alan King, others were storytellers, and the jokes would come within the story. Even George Carlin told stories.
Oh man, I love that stuff.
That's the whole thing about comedy. Comedy's a variety of different things. It's not always the ha-ha and the belly laughs. It's not always what Robin got on stage. But, what you do, from what I saw, and I went on the website, it's you do fantastic stuff, young man. There's no doubt about it. Well, I'm gonna give you some real good Bill Clinton critique right now. That's for sure. He loves my Bill Clinton, by the way. So that's
my God. Every time you do that, I just giggle. It's so good.
You ought to get Hammond and me together. That's all I'm telling you. You got to get me and Daryl Hammond together.
That would be so good.
When you went to the Academy, what is it that you picked up that has helped you get through some of the tough times in show business, the discipline aspect of it?
We had one teacher say, every single day, no matter what, every single day you have to put at least 20 minutes of work into this. Whether it's even just watching a movie and trying to study one of the actors, or whether it's reading a play, just even if it's something simple, just always do something to further your career every single day.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it goes the same with stand-up. You need to write. You got to write every day. Even if it's, I found a great exercise. I write letters to my sons.
Mm-hmm.
I have little notebook journals for them. But you have to do it every day.
Mm-hmm.
If you decide you're going to take a couple of days off, you're wasting your time wanting to do this. And and it's also the hard times. It's part of the journey. It's part of what we're doing, the ride that we're on.
Yeah.
You can't really enjoy the highs if you don't have the lows. I mean,
Right.
We all want to fight to be somewhere in between.
Right.
And I think a lot of the true artists don't care if they get famous. They just want to do their art, do their thing.
Right.
They want to live in that middle. But unfortunately, you hit the peaks and valleys, and both of them can be very dangerous. I've seen a lot of really great guys
Mm-hmm.
change with fame, and you find them becoming miserable
Mm-hmm.
and not happy with all the success they're getting.
Yeah, a lot of people look back and they look at some of the performers who maybe did a little drugs here and alcohol there, and they don't seem to understand. People don't understand that when you suddenly become the big person on campus, or you're the big star of the movie and you got to carry that movie. Some people handle it very well, but you're in a position at Saturday Night Live, and you've seen it and you've heard the stories of how difficult it is to get through it. I mean, but before we get to that, I just want you to talk to the young people out there, or people in general. You went, as I said, from a 17-year-old youngster, and at 17, I was still trying to be able to chew gum and walk at the same time, let alone move to New York. But how difficult is it? I mean, it's not like you arrive in New York and suddenly, here I am. Okay, I've taken a few classes. I've auditioned a little bit. It's Mark. I'm here. Talk to people about, I'd say on this program, and I've said to people who listen in from time to time, when I used to audition for commercials and theater, I'd walk on stage and they'd go, before I even open my mouth, next.
Yeah. One of the big problems that I think people have is that you see all the stuff in the news, and these stories about these guys who just overnight success. Well, nothing great ever happened overnight.
No,
nothing great happened overnight. And a lot of these stories, like the old stories of success, they cut out the years and years of training and the hard work, and then they say working their butts off and auditioning. It takes a lot of work. And the one thing that really took a lot of pressure off for me was one of my acting teachers told me, you're never actually auditioning for the job you're going in for.
No.
You're going in and showing the casting director who you are. And, months down the road, something comes across their desk and they go, what about that one guy?
Mm-hmm.
Remember he came in and read for the other thing? Let's call that guy. He would be right for this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I also know if you're not creating your own stuff, if you're expecting it to, somebody's going to make it happen for you. Oh, if I just get an agent, everything will be better. If I just get a manager, everything will be better. They don't do anything for you. They just take money from you when you get things.
Yeah.
They don't work as hard unless you're their big client. They're not going to work hard for you. You have to do your own stuff. You got to get out there and make your own stuff happen. I was involved in a theater company, and I was involved with a couple film companies, and we're just constantly trying to keep doing and doing and doing. Mm-hmm. And I would say 90% of the stuff that happened to me that was success was stuff that me and my group of friends that have created for each other.
Yeah.
I've gotten a lot of writing work. Not one of them was through my agent, sending a packet, doing a writing exercise and sending it in. Every time I've gotten a writing thing, it was because somebody liked what I was doing, asked if I'd come and take a look, and then somehow got involved.
Yeah.
So you go ahead. Sorry.
No, that's how I got a lot of work on Hill Street Blues and St. Elsewhere and some other shows in L.A. was because one night Stephen and his wife Barbara, who was also on Hill Street Blues, they walked in. And I'm sitting there with Marsha Warfield. I'm sitting there with Will Schreiner, and we're sitting there just having a couple of beers. Will had just performed. I'm hanging out that night. And Stephen walks in and he goes, Gary, what are you doing here? And I blah, 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 blah. Next, he says, listen, call my casting person on the show, yada, yada, yada. Do you have an agent yet? I said, yeah, I got someone. But, he said, well, I can get you all the 5 and under work you want. Now they call it a co-star. And so I played a variety of different things and I would always get a call. Gary, we need you to do this. Gary, we need you to do that. And it would be like one line here, one line there.
Yeah.
But man, it paid the bills. And I had so much fun.
That's what it's about.
Yeah. Yeah. I got to watch some great actors, particularly on St. Elsewhere. What's his name? Daniels. His name just went out of my brain. William Daniels, who was in a play that I loved so much, a musical, 1776, because I had Ken Howard on this show about a year ago, the late Ken Howard. And I remember saying to Ken that one day I was watching him and I'd worked with him all week long and I had a scene with him. And I just turned to him and I said, Mr. Daniels, in this week I have learned more from you than I ever have from any acting teacher I went to. And he said, why, of course, young man, you're watching the best. So it was.
Oh, that's awesome.
I had so much fun doing that, but I knew I wasn't going to rise to any sort of, acclaim the way I wanted to be. And I got married and, life changes. And I wanted to do other things anyway. But let's talk a little bit about your time at the Academy. You had to audition. A monologue, I presume?
Yeah, they wanted one comic one serious one. And I just saw the movie the other day, and we're laughing so hard. I did a monologue from American Buffalo. And I did a monologue from Dennis Franz's character. Like I was 16 when I auditioned. A 16-year-old kid trying to pretend he's 45. And it was like I did every mistake you can make, but they had us do the monologues, and they gave us notes, and I do it again, and then they give you another note, you do it again, and they tell you to do the opposite. And I think they were just testing to see if you listen to direction.
Yeah.
But I didn't know anything, so that's all I could do.
Right.
So I got in, and I was the youngest person there. I'm not the youngest to graduate. Kim Cattrall was the youngest to ever graduate from the school.
Yes.
But I got in, and I quickly became really good friends with all the teachers because I was so far behind all the other students that I needed extra work. So when I went home, everybody was going out and partying. The teenagers in New York, 20-somethings in New York, they're going out and having a good time. I was going home and reading books that I was supposed to have read when I was in high school, but blew off. So I worked so hard, the teachers embraced me and really saw how hard I was working. And I was just trying not to look bad. I wasn't trying to be the best student. I was just trying not to make an idiot of myself.
Yeah. Well, you know what? That's what it takes. That's the difference between someone who succeeds and someone who fails, someone who takes it for granted. They got a good look and I can just walk my way through it, as compared to somebody who really puts forth an effort. Pete Rose was not athletically gifted. He worked very hard to get where he is, not today, but when he played for the Cincinnati Reds. By the way, a quick story about Kim Cattrall. Guess what movie she was in way, way, way back?
Mannequin.
Porky's.
Oh, my God. She was in Porky's?
She was the cheerleader that went into the nevertheless, she was in a compromising position. Yes, watch Porky's and you'll see her.
I'm going to go back and watch that.
Yeah. What about your connection? What about your connection since your fellow graduates when you got out of the academy? Has that worked out for you as far as keeping in touch or no?
Yeah, we actually had a theater group going for a while, the Immoralists, and we did shows, and I was a member of the theater company, and the New York Times gave us really great reviews. We had this, one of our guys that graduated with us, this guy Derek, he was writing some amazing plays, and that really turned me on to wanting to write, because he got really great acclaims at a very young age by the New York Times, and all these Broadway magazines were doing these great write-ups over the work. And it was such an exciting time. And I think, in hindsight, I wish we would have just stuck with it. But a couple of the guys argued, and it went different ways. And everybody kind of went their own way. I remained friends with everybody, but it's weird with social media. Because, one of them will say something, and then the other one will say something undercut it. And it's like, oh, man, can we not do this on my page?
Yeah. We're talking to Mark Riccadonna, who's one of the writers for Weekend Update on Saturday Night Live. He's also a comedian, a writer, producer. We're going to get to Radio Gods here in a little bit, and we're having a lot of fun. Mark, let's talk a little bit about you're in young part of your career. What has been your highlight so far? Your biggest bang that you've gotten out of your career? The biggest moment you've had?
A weird thing. There's a couple different things because everything is like a stepping stone. There's never like the one big. Well, maybe when you get really successful there is, but for me, I've noticed it's just like a tiny progression to just keep moving, hopefully forward. And when I was 17, actually, at the Academy, one of my favorite movies was Boogie Nights, Paul Thomas Anderson. And Philip Seymour Hoffman, John C. Reilly was doing True West and Circle in the Square Theater. And my acting teacher was really good friends with Philip Seymour Hoffman. And they weren't famous like they, now everybody knows who they were. Back then, they had one big movie, and they just filmed Magnolia, but it wasn't even out yet, I don't think, or maybe it just came out. So we went to the theater and premiere, and Scott got me tickets, my acting teacher, and we actually had really good seats, and we were real close. And I was sitting by Don Cheadle and Sam Shepard, and Burt Reynolds was like a seat in 2 rows in front of us, and I heard that night he actually punched a reporter. I didn't get to see it, but
that was Burt. Yeah. That's Burt.
But after the show, they invited us to the after party across the street at the Palm. I was 17 years old. I couldn't get in the Palm, but I was walking with all these guys, this entourage of actors. So nobody questioned anything, and I just walked in, and I was nervous. I was scared. I was trying just not to make an idiot of myself. So I, sat by the bar, but, I was too afraid to order. If they found out I was underage, I'd get kicked out and whatever. But I did look older. And Philip Seymour Hoffman noticed I didn't have anything in my hands, and he walked over and goes, "Hey, you want a beer or something?" And I, sure. And Philip Seymour Hoffman bought me my first beer in New York City. And I thought, this is a moment that I'm always going to remember. Like, this is something.
He did a part that I adored because I had met the man in Los Angeles. He played Truman Capote.
Oh my God, he was so good.
And I remember when I was at Liz Torres's Christmas party, and there was a very older, sickly-looking man in a corner, and I wasn't sure. He was kind of in the dark, and it was Truman. And at the time, I used to do back in the day when I did my stand-up, I did a lot of impressions. Why, I know that's hard to believe from me that I do impressions. And I used to do a Truman Capote where I would just put my one hand on my eye and I would just go, well, and people back then would just laugh, and they got it. Today, these young kids, they don't know who Truman Capote is. But anyway, I got a chance to talk to Truman, and he was getting tired, and he passed away about a year later after I met him. But what an amazing act portraying Truman Capote. Absolutely,
such a good movie.
Oh yeah.
I got to meet. This is another weird story, and this was a moment of my first thinking I made it, and realizing that it was such a small stepping stone. It was my first corporate gig that I ever got, and it was at a casino in upstate New York, the Turning Stone Casino, and I had to buy a suit. I didn't even own a suit. I went out and I bought a suit, and I put it in my car, drove 5 hours to Syracuse, got up there, get in, and they checked me into my room, and they're treating me first class. But right when I walked in, there was a giant, 3 stories high poster of Stephen Wright was there that night. And the whole reason I wanted to be a comedian was watching Stephen Wright, and I'm thinking, I made it. I'm playing the same place as Stephen Wright. And I get ready for the show. I shower, put my suit on, hit the elevator. It was one of those key elevators. You have to swipe the little card. You hit the button, and it takes you to the floor. And I get down, and the guy's there to meet me. And I think this is going to be a very stuffy corporate thing. This guy's drunk out of his mind. And he takes us to the back at the golf house where they're eating steak. They've been golfing all day. Everybody's drunk and can barely walk. And, they want me to start drinking with them. And I was nervous. I was scared. I'm getting a big check. I don't want to screw up. So I go, after the show, fellas, it would be great. But right now I'm just going to. So the other comic goes on. And he was in recovery. So when he mentioned that, they didn't send, didn't harass him anymore for drinks.
Right.
I go on stage, and I was maybe 25 at the time. They send up a platter of tequila shots. There were 10 shots of tequila on this thing. They sit it on the bar stool next to me, and they start yelling, "Drink." So I have a half hour of comedy to do. I drink a couple of them during my act, and just to quiet them down. And it goes okay. It's all right. And then at the last joke, before I hit the punchline, I slam all the shots of tequila, say the punchline, and they go crazy. I mean, completely crazy, screaming and clapping, and it's the greatest thing they've ever seen. So I hurry off stage, and I grab my guy that was drunk. I go, "You got to take me to my room because I have about 2 minutes. I'm either going to throw up or black out." The check was already sent to the manager, so I didn't have to, deal with any paperwork. So he starts walking me through the casino, and I start getting blurry. I start getting woozy. And he keeps telling me, "I'm a comedian. You know what? I'm the funniest guy at my job. I should have been doing stand-up tonight. I should have been a comedian." Yeah. And I'm sitting there thinking, yeah, everybody says that, whatever. I'm going to go back to my room and call my comedian friends and tell them about the idiot who sent up all the drinks. And, he's a comedian, too. And I go to the elevator, and it really hits me this time.
Oh, yeah.
I'm stumbling bad. And he turns around and walks away. I get in the elevator. I hit my floor. I didn't swipe the card. So the door's shut, and I'm waiting for the elevator to get to my floor.
Right.
I could have been in there 3 minutes. I could have been in there an hour. I have no idea. So the elevator doors then open up again. We're on the first floor. Yeah. And Stephen Wright walks into the elevator. I'm standing next to Stephen Wright, swirling in my own drunkenness. And he looks at me because I didn't get off the elevator when he opened the doors open. Yeah. So he swipes his card. He hits his floor. He was in the penthouse on the top floor. And he goes, "What floor are you?" And I go, 8. So he hits 8, and we're in the elevator. And I'm going, I have to tell him. He's the reason I'm doing comedy. This is the entire reason I'm at this place right now that we're both in the elevator, is I decided to become a comedian because of inspired by him, and now it's my first big paycheck I've ever gotten as a stand-up comedian. I got to tell. And the door ding, ding, opens up. He goes, "This is your floor." I step off the elevator and realize I didn't say anything. So I turn around and I scream at him just as the door shut, "I'm a comedian too!" And the door shut.
And he probably, knowing Steven, he probably went, "Yeah, okay, so."
So I'm imagining he went back to his room, called one of his comedian friends, and goes, "I met some drunk guy who thinks he's a comedian."
Well, it's funny. I used to see Steven all the time when he first got started in Los Angeles, and he was dating one of the bartenders, one of the girls at the Improv. Great guy. he's stone faced. He's a great guy, but when you get him going, he'll keep going. He's a little bit like he's a little opposite of Gilbert Gottfried, but once you get him going, he's just fine.
Oh my God.
I want to fast forward for a little bit here because I promoted this thing on the fact that you work on Weekend Update.
Oh, yeah.
How did Saturday Night Live come about for you?
Again, like we were just saying, it did not come from sending in a packet. It did not come from anything through the legit business of comedy. It came from a comedian friend of mine, got a job writing. He was where you just submit the jokes. You send them in. You just send them in. And if you get them, if you get it, done, they send you a check if they get on air. So he asked if I wanted to help him. So I started helping him. But my jokes were getting in and getting a little further than his jokes, and they're moving on. So he decided to mention something to them about me, and they said, well, yeah, just have him submit themselves then. Because you're only allowed to submit so many jokes.
Mm-hmm.
So now we're both submitting jokes. Well, we both think we're not going to get asked back. This was last season. We both go, we're not getting asked back. It's fine, whatever. It was fun while it lasted. It was amazing. Well, we get a phone call that we're going to get put on a thing called the premise list. And that's like getting a promotion. Mm-hmm. We get told we're going to get an email every day of all the list of premises they want jokes for. And then at the end of the week, you submit them. And there was like this moment of like, I thought we were doing horribly, but here they really liked what we were doing because none of them made it. And now this last season on the premise list, I ended up getting 3 jokes on the air. And it was such an amazing moment of like, I got 3 jokes on. Like, mm-hmm. I got to watch Michael Che tell my jokes mm-hmm. on NBC. And it was like such a cool moment of like, I never thought at all. Didn't even think we were going to get asked back to do it again. And ended up getting a few on.
Explain to everybody out there, because they're going to say 3 jokes. They don't understand. Explain exactly how difficult and the dynamic of how difficult that is to get even one joke on. I know performers that were connected with that show that never got on more than 3 times during the whole season.
So basically for Weekend Update, they probably see somewhere around 10,000 jokes a week. I would estimate about 10,000 jokes in an entire week. Mm-hmm. And then Friday, when they kind of put it together, what they're going to do, those 10,000 jokes get whittled down to about 40. Mm-hmm. And by Saturday morning, it's about, 12. And by Saturday night, you're talking maybe about 10 jokes make it. Mm-hmm. So it's a huge process of basically cutting. And then you're also competing against the guys who are actually on staff writing that are sitting there. And as news come in, they have it immediately. So, Friday night something happens, they have jokes for it for Saturday morning mm-hmm. that we can't submit to. And they want the freshest stuff. So it's hard to get something that happened on Monday on the air by Saturday. It's old news.
Yeah.
But it's such a process that, literally they go through stacks of paper every week just to get to the Weekend Update jokes. And then when they do characters on there, mm-hmm. you can kiss half the jokes goodbye. Mm-hmm. They have a character come in and fill that time. During the rehearsal in the daytime, Saturday after, they do like I say daytime, it's like 6 or 8 at night. Mm-hmm. They run the show, and then they cut stuff. The show runs a little long. So if you're going to go see it, if you want to see the taping of Saturday Night Live, try to go to the rehearsal. You can get more show. Mm-hmm. But the Weekend Update runs a little bit longer on there, and then they listen for crowd reaction, see which ones they keep and what they tweak.
You and I talked a little bit that you actually watched, and I want you to talk about this, just how difficult the audition process is for the performers that are on there. They see them on the show, And by the way, folks, these are not kids that come in from Bloomington, Illinois, or Syracuse.
These are kids. Cattle call.
Yeah, these are people that are handpicked. But talk about the audition process, because I know you've been part of it when you for some of the performers that are on the show.
Yeah, it was when I was working at Stand Up New York. They had a audition for the Keenan Got It. So it was whatever. I can't be quoted on this, but it is. They were looking for the black guy. Mm-hmm. Everyone on the audition was a black male actor, and they had, I would say there's probably about 12 guys that went on, mm-hmm. and Lorne Michaels came in, and he had his entourage of people that work on the show, mm-hmm. and they had this table in the back, and it was very intimidating. It was, even when the audiences were coming in, they knew that table was powerful. Like, it's when you walk in the room, you could just feel the electricity coming off that table. Mm-hmm. And they had to go on stage. They did a little bit of stand-up. They had to do, I think, 3 original characters and then 3 impressions. And some people that were comedians would do their impressions with jokes in it, and their characters were in scene. Some people just flat out just did, okay, here's this person, and do it. And I'm going to tell you what, they ended up having to come back twice. And it was, the competition level was so brutal. They were so good. The people that they had that came in for this audition, I knew some of them, I didn't know some of them. And I'm telling you, they were so good. It was like watching perfection. And you're going, how can they pick one? Mm-hmm. Like, everybody on that stage deserves their own show. It was very intense.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, at the very beginning of Saturday Night Live, they took most of their people from Second City, Chicago, or Toronto, and it wasn't for my area of the world, the Groundlings, until Phil Hartman kind of came along. There were a few, not Gilda, but one of the girls that was on the first year, she was from the Groundlings, but they didn't start really bringing the Groundlings people in until many, many years later. And I know that, when I was in class at the Groundlings, Saget was in my class along with Kevin Costner. And the minute Bob got on stage, you knew he had more talent in his pinky than anybody you knew had running through their entire body. Bob is just the fastest thinking, talking comic, the hardest working millionaire comic, struggling comic that I can possibly think of. You have you obviously have many goals ahead of yourself. We got about 7 minutes left here in the program, but Mark, what's the list of someone or some people that you would really like to work with, whether it be as the writer, producer, director, actor, whatever cap you want to wear? Who are some of the people in the business you would really like to work with?
Man, I'll tell you what, one of the few times I've ever been starstruck, and I just really want to work with him on some level because I just think he's so amazing, is Bobcat Goldthwait. Oh. I went to the Woodstock Film Festival, watched his film, and I went over to talk to him, and I know a bunch of Boston comics, and I was like, had it all planned out in my head how he was going to smoothly let him know that I'm, in the gang, I'm not a weirdo. And I went over and I was like a little schoolgirl. Mm-hmm. And I could watch myself, and it was so painful watching myself just talk to him. And he's so talented as a writer and a director, and I would just love to work on something with him. I think he's so good at what he does. I really would. He passed. But I really would like to work with somebody like a Robin Williams, who just has that dramatic bone in him, as well as the funny. Watching his span of work, I would do anything to just see that in action. The closest thing I think you can get to seeing him is Rick Overton.
Yeah, Rick's close, but he's not Robin.
Yeah, Yeah.
I mean, there's a thing about Robin that was not pretentious. He was human. He was real. He was one of the nicest guys that God ever put on earth. But boy, when you were on stage with him, you'd introduce him and you'd maybe stay on the stage with him for a couple minutes if he'd let you. And then you'd see this look come over his eye. And it was time for Gary to leave the stage and let Robin take over, because Robin could go for hours and hours and hours.
Oh, man. How cool the feeling you must have with knowing that you get to share stage and just watch that beautiful chaos.
Well, I mean, you can talk to Rick. He can tell you, too, just how brilliant he was. And you also know somebody who used to come in to Catch a Rising Star in his pajamas because he lived around the corner from it, and that was Gilbert Gottfried. He'd literally come in. He would literally come in and do a set in his pajamas.
Oh, my God, that's hysterical.
I mean,
so funny.
He would literally come in, and he would come into even Dangerfields and do the same thing.
I'm gonna ask them instead about this.
Yeah. I saw him a couple of times do it. I've heard so many stories about it, though.
I love The Aristocrats, the movie The Aristocrats.
Oh, yes.
And the Gilbert moment, which actually Paul Provenza, we're talking all Radio Gods people, but Paul Provenza was the producer on it. But Gilbert's moment in The Aristocrats is kind of where I feel like it changes gears. Mm-hmm. Like you go, how can you do a whole movie just on one joke? And then by the time you get to Gilbert, you're in fifth gear. And you're just going, I can't believe we're going this fast.
Well, every comic has a story about The Aristocrats, and that's no problem. Here's the big question of the night. Through all your success, through all the stuff you've gone through, the ups and downs and the upward mobility of yourself, what have you learned about yourself that has impacted your career that could be a helpful thing for other people out there that could be listening in, or advice you would give? I almost feel like John Lipton. What's your favorite noise? What's your favorite sound?
I just got back from this comedy festival in Atlanta, and there was a lot of newer comics that were competing. And I don't know if you know John Novosad out of Denver, Colorado. He used to go by Hippie Man. This guy won an alternative comedy competition. The hippest of the hipsters are at this competition, and I was there to host him. This guy came in, 30-year vet. When he walked in, there were so many looks at him like, what is this old guy doing here? Mm-hmm. And you know what? He cleaned up. He crushed every show, different material, and ended up winning the entire competition. And the thing is he's just been doing himself. He's just himself, and he's just on his own journey. And right now is his time. There's the guys who get their time at 21 and they don't have enough to back it up. And there's guys like him who's been doing comedy 30 years, and it's his time. And he has all the work to back it up. So success is just going to keep happening for somebody like that. I think people need to respect comedy more and respect art more. Mm-hmm. We're all in this together. It's a fraternity. We're all friends. It's we're at this competition, and comics are usually on the outside looking in. We're usually lone wolves, and we're at this comedy festival, and you see it, all these lone wolves in a pack. Mm-hmm. So we're not the weird ones. We're all normal. The regular people are the weird ones.
Or at least that's our perception of it anyway.
Yeah, but I think we if you're just starting out or whatever, it's don't compete against these other people. Compete against yourself. Mm-hmm. Just make yourself better every day and work on it every day. Be a good person. This business is really, really tight, and
the business will eat you alive.
And anytime you put negativity out there, it's going to come back to you. You might as well just smile and enjoy it, and just don't let that negative stuff come to you. Henry Winkler, which we talked about earlier, he goes, when somebody comes at you with any kind of negativity, you need to be able to look them in the eye and be strong enough to say, I'm sorry, I just don't have time for this, and walk away.
Mark, the hour has gone by.
Oh,
As a matter of fact,
man.
we're running a little bit over it. We've been listening to Mark Riccadonna, who is a good friend of mine. He's a comedian, he's a writer, he's an actor, he's a producer. He is a little bit of everything. Hang on the phone here a little bit after I say goodbye to you, Mark, and we're going to talk a little bit. For all of you out there that are interested, keep in touch with me on Facebook. Gary Allen, ALAN. Go on over to youtube.com to Gary Allen, The Express Interviews. This program will repeat itself on Thursday night at 7 p.m. on diversitybroadcastnetwork.com, also on progressivevoices.com. Go to tunein.com, sign up, tell them you're with TMV Cafe, and you can listen to all the shows here. I thank you all very much. Mark, thank you so much for being with us on The Express tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you all out there for taking the time out of your day to join us here on The Express. This is Gary Allen. Until next week, please take care of yourselves and each other.
You've been listening to The Express with Gary Allen. Join us here every Tuesday night at 10 for more captivating talk with Gary Allen. See you next time on The Express.